Hello everyone, Tareck Adeeb, Successful Astrology, all the various people who listen to this, just getting on now. I'm in a different location. I'm in New York, baby, Brooklyn, baby. I have to say I really like it here. It's every time I come to New York, especially Brooklyn, I really do find it so cool. Like, it's just got such an amazing culture, diversity. Hope you can hear me. It's also got so much great food. It's just amazing. But again, we all have our own unique perspectives, don't we? I wonder if somebody who's been living here for the majority of their life, with all the changes that are happening, feel the same way as me. We saw a lot of change occur from 2020, and really when you go back to 2017, when you go back to Uranus into Taurus, 2018 actually, May 2018, we see so much change occurring, and there's still a lot more change occurring and yet to change. I mean, this weekend we've just seen the coronation of King Charles III, and there's a lot of people who paid attention to that. And it's interesting, I wrote a post on LinkedIn that there is also a lot of people who are against it. I went to a party this weekend and I was chatting to a guy from St Kitts, and there are people who don't like the monarchy, or feel what's happened in the past, the British Empire, these sorts of things, and how they're against it, for their sovereignty, for their feeling of empowerment. Just being associated with these things can lend to the history, the past, and slavery obviously is such a heinous thing which happened. I remember, obviously my lineage is Egyptian, and sometimes people say, oh yeah, like the pharaohs were slave masters, for example, which is documented in certain religious texts. And there's even information to say that wasn't the case. That actually it wasn't like it was compared to modern history. So, it's all of these unknowns and, like, you could say deceptions or hidden things, which lend to this idea of uncertainty and change, and then also calling things out, which is, what is happening right now. I know the monarchy was saying very much to do with, we want to do, inquiry about this, about what happened. And, the reality is, the reason why, let's say, a lot of Jamaicans don't like their African ancestors is because they were sold out by their own people, and this is when the elitism serves its own, and a lot of people, let's say, don't understand the idea of class systems. Obviously, there is a class system in many parts of the world, and even in America, when you don't feel it as much as you would do, let's say, being in Europe or even India or places like that. Obviously Egypt, they've all had these class systems. They've had kings and queens that have ruled those places for so long. But even here, when you look at money, the idea of wealth, elitism, of course there's a class system here as well, keeping up with the Joneses. I have a house here, I have this amount of money in my bank, and all of that is to do with certain class, or certain, hierarchy. And if you want to look at, let's say, Aristotle and the nature of these things, we get to see more of that, more of these ideas of status. And status anxiety is a real problem in society. It doesn't lend to charity, it doesn't lend to harmony. And ultimately, service is the big one, isn't it? I thought, again, I've got a bias here. Again, we've all got biases. Oh, that's a shame, but it seems like I'm in LaGuardia pathway here. So, the randomness of these things, again, lends to uncertainty. You suddenly, you end up somewhere, you didn't know how you got there, you're here. You think about a refugee, how hard it is for them. But then we're here, and then, planes are going past, and forgive me, I have to deal with it. At least I'm showing up. But yeah, there's so much to talk about because we are going through this incredible change right now. And like I say, Queen Elizabeth II, I mean, again, put in a cultural context here. She reigned for 70 years. It's a huge amount of time. There certainly wasn't the internet then. And this time around, the coronation, you know, how it worked out in terms of colour and all of that kind of stuff, which wasn't 70 years ago as well, and how it was disseminated on YouTube and various other social media platforms. It's a real statement, you know, and people love the tradition of things and that conservatism, and again, class and how people do things. It's very impressive. But is it hypnotism, you know? And this is why you're also getting this backlash, you know. There was also a lot of like, "You're not my king," you know, which was going on the airwaves. And it was interesting the way the BBC covered some of that, because they want to make it seem democratic. But then obviously you get things like TikTok and various other social media platforms that are showing that, you know, the police took quite a hard line. Now none of that is really what I want to talk about too much. It's just, when I look at what's going on with the astrology, we're really seeing this kind of like top-down, you know, society being shaken. And similarly, you're seeing like with Russia right now, you know, how they are really hitting Ukraine now hard. And in the astrology, that would make sense. So there is a lot of unknowns going on right now. But the good news is, you know, we're really coming towards the end of what has been a very difficult period in the astrology, and we're so close now to coming out of May. So that's wonderful. Because it's really been the hardest, well, the whole build-up, March to May, has been the hardest time of the year. And, you know, we've just to say this, again, I haven't got my notes with me and stuff like that, but, you know, it's okay, you know, we've got to keep going. If you watch some of my videos on accessible astrology at the start of the year, you know, it really harks back to that, you know, this uncertainty, this difficulty, and still trying to keep it together. And I think everyone can relate to that to a certain extent, because, you know, banks are collapsing still. I had a chat with like friends and family as part of the reason why I'm in New York right now. Just been at a party which was such a good laugh, you know. It was really great to meet some amazing people here. It was really fated, it felt really great, really lucky. And you know, and some people don't want to be in the cities right now. They think it's like a scary place to be. You know, that's the nature of this psychology of like the post-COVID world. You know, how sadly, you know, the fact that we're still talking about it, you know, it says a lot, doesn't it? You know, and the decisions that were made and the choices that were made, and all of these things have got such a deep psychological impact on everyone right now. And it's how do we shake it? You know, how do we come out of this this trauma? You know, this PTSD. You know, when everybody got shaken to the core, and yet sadly, you know, the reason why there is this separation, why there is this difference that exists in the world, why there is this conflict, and there's this fear, you know, of this occurring more so, where people have chosen a certain side, and rather than being whole or being one or being in the centre, there's so much division, there's so much left and right or whatever. And you know, the same thing with Ukraine, you know, like there's this huge difference of, you know, who's right or wrong, and, you know, rather than working it out and coming to, you know, a commonality, there is separation, and that's such a shame. But that's what we're working through. That's always what happens in times of hardship. You know, preludes to, let's say, world wars and things like that. Excuse me. So, you know, you see people making choices right now to serve themselves, you know, like whether it's like going to, let's say, more rural places and considering food and all of this sort of stuff. And that's what's been happening. That's what we've been talking about for a while now. You know, we've been talking about that. And we've just come out of this Scorpio eclipse. So we've got 6 more months to go before we conclude this survive and thrive theme. But everyone felt that Aries eclipse, you know, everyone who's sensitive, that is, you know, really understood like how difficult that was, because it's again the emergence of the new. Now, in a week's time, we'll be talking about Jupiter into Taurus. So that's really the final chess piece, you know, that I've been waiting for, to really see how this summer's going to go. Because once we're over that, once we get to the new moon in a couple of weeks' time, which, you know, I'll be talking about next week, then that's it. You know, we're out of this huge need to get our ducks in a row, you know, to determine what we're going to do in time of crisis. And it was interesting because at the weekend, I was with some, I say, family friends, and it was interesting to me to think like how few people, like say, have invested in Bitcoin, for example, and things like that. And it's true, like, my mentorship, as many of my people have talked to, you shouldn't invest in anything that you don't trust, believe, or understand. And, I brought a financial astrologer to talk about it, and he said exactly that. He said, don't do anything you don't understand, because it's going to stress you out. And there's a lot of people, especially millennials, but there's a lot of people that invested in these things and it's in huge losses, because they get caught in this idea of get rich quick, and they're manipulated to a certain extent. And everyone's trying to get the next Bitcoin, which will never be another Bitcoin, but still, yes, people can make huge gains probably in 2024, 2025, as we're moving into this exponential age. And the reality is, all this crypto thing, as far as I'm concerned, is a setup, for, let's say, a CBDC or like the new Bretton Woods. But what was interesting is that one of the guys, who was aware of it, but said, I'm not doing it until regulation comes in, which, is smart, it's wise, because at the end of the day, it's risky. It's like the gold rush. A lot of people who got the gold before it was legal, whatever, back in the days of that, there was bandits that came and took it, so there is a lot of that kind of stuff going on. There's a lot of corruption, and it's a dangerous place to be. It's a risky place to be, I suppose. But the point is that if you don't get it before regulation, you're going to miss out on the exponential gains. So it's catch-22. Like, when it becomes regulated, you kind of miss the opportunity. But at the same time, it's a risky place to be, basically. So again, don't do anything that makes you feel unsafe. That's really the nature of this Taurus Scorpio stuff. It's about safety, ultimately. It's about making decisions that make you feel safe. So again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first one is, shelter, food, and that's why it's been such a big deal, recently. Making sure that you have got food or you have got shelter, and community and loved ones are very important in regard to that. So it's those basics, and again, for me, how I grew up in England, excuse me, oh, there's another plane, but how I grew up in England, we had an abundance of food, abundance of safety, really. Yorkshire was a very kind of like thriving place for that. So, it's never really a concern for me, like water and food, and I was quite lucky, I suppose. But then you come to places where there's not as much water, and it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be very important to have those things in the future. There's no doubt about it. If you can't eat, look what happened in the Arab Spring. People revolt, and that's really what's coming up next. And until we get past this Jupiter into Taurus, which we'll talk about next week, and then we get to the new moon, and then we're in a new theme for the summer. When Pluto goes back into Capricorn, that's it. With this Venus retrograde, that's when we're going to see what happens next, i.e. the Venus retrograde is going to reveal this discontent, people who are going to be, we'll have to see how it goes, but the likelihood is it going to be bail-ins? Is it going to be people can't access money? We'll have to see how this month plays out still, and that will decide like what I'll be talking about more. But yes, we're almost there. So pat yourself on the back if you haven't made any rash decisions, crazy decisions. If you're still continuing despite all the madness in the world and all the the fear or the things that might make us react and do crazy things. If you're still keeping going, keeping calm and carrying on and just relaxing and trusting, it'll be much easier to make decisions next month when we're out of this remarkable change that's going on right now. And like I say, it's a big deal if you're a Brit, to see the coronation. Obviously, we've been conditioned to that. Not everybody has access to those people. But again, just by default, you become a subject to a certain extent if you're a British person. But having said that, there's a lot of people that don't believe in that, and that's part of this discontent. It's a part of this upset, and this powerlessness that people feel, and anger, which is a big one. Venus, excuse me, Venus going into Leo is a part of that. The lion is representation of Leo, and that can be, if it's not met with accountability, justification, if it's not met with a certain degree of understanding, then the lion roars, and that's the thing. If the lion hasn't got the pride, to hang out with. I've got a tickle in my throat, I need to get some water. What's up? Have we got any water, please? Just get a glass of water, because my throat's...
Is it too loud for you, or should I shut the window?
Oh, no, it's all good. It's just there's planes going off, but that's fine. It's all good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Are you going to come out here? Come out here.
Good girl.
Okay, thanks, man. Yeah, so yeah, it's just a weird time. But the secret is to be grateful. It always comes back to that. If we're grateful right now, then you just don't know. I mean, I'm always going to be an advocate of trusting the world, trusting why you're here. Yeah, it's amazing, by the way, Brooklyn, my man. Yeah, you're coming over here soon, for definite. So we've got to trust and be grateful. We really do, because it's not easy, and this is part of sovereignty. This is part of the test. If we are going to the fear, it's really simple. Just to sum it all up, it's about fear and love. It's that simple, really. And that difference, that space in between, that shift, which is Scorpio, by the way, the idea of life or death, it has this element of extreme, and we're still in it. Like, even though the Scorpio eclipse is now, we're on the other side of it, we've still got a Taurus eclipse going on in 6 months' time. So that's when we're really shifting into this, again, the Chinese New Year, which is the water rabbit, and then we're really shifting into this Libra Aries stuff, which is much more to do with the other. Libra is the other, but the will Aries, i.e. individual, sovereignty, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be much more visceral, and it's fascinating when you watch the nodes. And Eugenia, by the way, has just done a talk on it, and she's come up with some really interesting information, so have a look on Accessible Astrology about that. I'm not sure whether she's posted it yet, but she's done a lot of research on what happens in these themes of Aries and the South Node. But anyway, it's all about choosing love over fear, okay? And that's really the secret to all of this. It's easy to get caught in reaction, i.e. the lizard brain, rather than going into trust and surrender to the mammalian brain. And it's easy to get anxious when, yes, not enough money's coming through, and we're all dealing with that, by the way. Like right now, I can get frustrated with this plane going over, but, it's funny to me because it's random and it's different. So if we can accept difference and we can trust that this is a changing time, then we can make better decisions and jump onto this exponential wave, which you cannot deny now with AI and all this sort of stuff. And it's nothing to be scared of, because if we do trust, let's say, integrity, harmony, sovereignty, then we can pivot in a way on this wave and trust that everything's going to be okay. So we've all been affected by the difficulty of the last couple of years, and we've all been rocked because of it, and we've had to make riskier decisions. Like, again, if you, for example, if you bought Bitcoin at 70k and it's down to 29, 30, whatever it is, then you might feel you made a bad decision. But you might, when it goes to 100k and the way things are going, it's seeming more and more like that, then you haven't. But it's patience. Again, it's a huge one in terms of integrity. Patience, relaxing, and yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's encouraging you all to fly right now. That's what it is. Because that was restricted, wasn't it? When the nodes were in Sagittarius and Gemini, there was a lot of restriction on travel, and it still is difficult for people to go out. Like, for example, the party I went to this weekend, which is unbelievable, and it's like, the first time a lot of people have done that for a while, because everyone's been obviously so concerned about what happened over the last 3 years, to go out to a party and spend money on a plane ticket. And, if we hadn't done it, we never would have known. And there's amazing opportunities, by taking those risks and being around people, and just trusting that things are going to work out. So I really need everyone to, whoever's listening, and it's wonderful to see people listening, and whoever's going into the idea of the heart and trust and faith, because I'm a big believer in all of that anyway. I chatted to a really cool guy this weekend, and he wasn't into, let's say, God or the idea of something else out there. But we had such a cool conversation because, respect everyone's differences, and when we can kind of like find a commonality again, that's where the magic is, that's where the beauty is, that's where the art is, that's where the inspiration. I was very inspired by him, for example. So there's so much to gain from taking a chance, trusting, doing it, all these sorts of things that make life so much more interesting. And if you've been feeling depressed, you've been feeling like lethargic, you've been feeling concerned, exasperated, all these things that have been so testing for so long, then we are about to go through the next stage of this year now. We really, really are. So we want to get to June waking up from what has been a stressful period of time, a radical, a transformational period of time. And again, just looking at it from a British perspective, because again, we're all conditioned with our perspectives. There's now a new monarch there, for example, which is a big deal, I think, for a lot of Brits. Not everyone agrees with it though. And likewise, when you're looking at AI, that also happened during this period of time. I had a cool conversation with a few people about it, especially in the music industry. I mean, it's crazy what's going on with that now. And, if you want to check out Grimes and people like that who are trying to look at this and, the idea of blockchain technology as the next phase, I'm very excited about it and I'm going to get involved with it. So, it's really exciting, if you're on the exponential wave. If you're not, if you are in fear of it, and this is why the difference between love and fear, then it could seem really scary because, no one knows what the job's going to look like in 2 years. If there's people who are not authentic and, unintegral, they're going to get exposed, I believe, in the next couple of years. And again, if you're following fear, you could say, right, it's total control. We're all about to get controlled. But I think you're missing the point of life, personally, from an optimistic point of view, if you're not trusting, again, being grateful and relaxing into the unknown, knowing that just around the corner, everything could radically change. For the better, though. For the better. And that's our service then. If someone is preaching service, but they're not authentic, i.e. they're manipulative, then they'll get exposed. But it's up to us to create light. Now, again, we don't want to get into conspiracy, I believe, or fear, because if we start to get too wrapped up in that, then what happens is that we create more of it. We create more of that fear-based reality. And it's true, there is a lot of fear about. There are a lot of people who are terrified about, let's say, the end of a certain so-called democracy or so-called this. And yeah, there is some very strange things going on that, from a free will perspective, seem to border on fascism. And to be in denial of that, to be in willful ignorance of that, or to be in apathy of these things isn't sovereignty. So I think the key to it is right now, and I keep saying this, got to relax. Just got to relax, okay? Relax to the unknown. Yes, don't be in denial of the change, that's occurring right now. Don't be in apathy about not feeling that you can make any difference. All of that is fear and it's slavery in a way, if you want to describe it as that. I don't like to go into those terms these days because it gets labelled with certain things. But we always have a choice, and that's the beauty of the human experience. We are sensitive individuals who feel things. That's very different from AI. That's what AI hasn't got. They don't have that emotional empathy and that feeling to kind of, radically transform, which again is a very Scorpio thing. And we're coming out of that now. We're getting more clear on our fixed Earth, Taurus, where we belong, and who's who as well. And as this emergence of Aries and Libras coming in, where do we individuate? You know, where do we become, you know, participate? You know, where do we actually lend our uniqueness to the world? And that's the joy of this time. You know, that's what we don't want to miss out on. You know, we could, you know, it's stressful, yes, when we had life-changing experiences, you know, like grief, but we're really coming out of it now. That's the beauty of this. Doesn't mean we have to not still feel the collective, which is what Libra will bring. And this Venus into Leo, which is coming, and obviously Venus is in Cancer right now. So again, a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling. We've got to start aligning ourselves and trusting that what the decisions that we've made is all part of where we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do. And the beauty of this Aquarius in Pluto, which isn't there for much longer, by the way, and we're talking about this very soon, it's the new, you know, it's the new Earth, it's the new opportunity, and that's what all this technology is bringing. And if we can align with that and we can trust it and we can, again, put it into its right place, I mean, if it's not relevant to you, that doesn't matter. But if we can really, really just give it a go, you know, then it can make life a lot easier for us, and that's what the technology is all about. There are some people who want to completely disconnect from all of this, live off the grid and all that kind of stuff, and that's there's always going to be extremes, and that might be relevant to them, and that's fine too. But if you don't get involved, or at least know what it's all about, just like, you know, when people just denied the internet, you know, back in 2000, it's the same thing. People just sort of thought, oh, it's not for me, you know, I don't understand it, and it was only until streaming came along that everyone just suddenly started using it. So why miss out? And the thing is, things are going to accelerate so much more quicker now because of AI. And, you know, when automation comes in, which is coming, you know, people will might have fear of it. So we've really got to just be prepared and relax. Just relax into it. See how it serves you. You know, go on ChatGPT, give it a go. Some people say it's amazing. Some people say it's crap. You know, that's the perspectives I'm getting right now. But don't miss out on the opportunities that might be coming to you right now, that might not make sense. You know, it was fascinating for me, you know, yesterday when I was chatting to everyone about Bitcoin, and it still seemed very alien to a lot of people. I just found it really interesting, you know, how, again, untrusting it is to a lot of people. And yes, look, again, do your own research. I'm not saying it's the saviour, but it is interesting, again, when you look at how many people are buying it, you know, the institutions, but then the media are saying a different thing. So that's the difference, that's the discernment, you know, that's the difference between people who are understanding this exponential wave and people who aren't. And crisis will come, you know, it's inevitable, you know, crisis will come, and let's see how it unfolds. You've got to ask yourself, if you could not access your money, would you still be okay? Would you still have food? Are you in a community where everyone would share, you know? And that's the sort of questions you need to ask. And you don't need to inundate yourself with it. You don't need to be scared of the cities, you know. That's something that I think is really sad. And there's so much to enjoy in the cities, you know. Having said that, if things got bad, could you get out of the city? And these are the sort of things that you need to ask yourself, you know, right now. But anyway, let's have a look at this week ahead. This Mercury retrograde is about to end. Thank God, you know, because I think a lot of people have been at the wit's end right now. Everyone needs a holiday. You know, it's beautiful weather today. I mean, it's just a joy. You know, it's a joy to feel that, you know, if you're experiencing that right now. And even if you're in the southern hemisphere and you're experiencing autumn, you know, hopefully you're enjoying it, because it is beautiful, the seasons, you know. It's something I absolutely love. I love the seasons. And there's always opportunities, you know. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. From my perspective, you know, God is good. You know, there is always a way. There's always a positive outcome. There's always an opportunity to serve, you know, and that's why I quite like tradition. And I suppose there's a part of me that does like the idea of that. And I've got no opinion about, let's say, certain authorities in the world, really, you know. As long as everyone is doing the best that they can, then I've got no problem with it. Obviously, people in those positions of power probably have a lot more responsibility than certainly I do. So it must be a harder task to endure and also to serve. But everybody has the opportunity to serve, and in that sense, everyone's equal. So if everyone's participating for the highest good and everyone's offering who they are in the best way and everyone's doing the best that they can to transform their fear into love, you find gratitude, and that is the gold. That is the beauty of this earth. And it's not always easy to do. Like I say, if you go through grief, we're all going to go through it, but if you go through loss and these things that we've all been going through, then yeah, it's hard. If you don't surrender to that grief, that you could call it a negative emotion, it's going to stay with you. So you have to go through it. You have to finally reach acceptance. If you're limiting yourself, i.e. you're not happy, then you've got to make a difference. You've got to do something about it, because the worst case scenario is you go the other way, you go into depression, and sadly there is a lot of people depressed right now. And even worse, you could check out, there's been a lot of suicide, and how we're going to provide light and inspiration for people who are suffering right now, and how can we help? How can we serve these people? How can we just do a little bit of kindness, a little bit of charity, whatever it may be, and that makes a difference in someone's life that day. What a wonderful thing to experience. And again, we saw the best and the worst of people, during the COVID thing. We saw people who put the fences up. I'm all right, Jack. You're not coming in. And obviously everyone had to make the necessary protection, for themselves, their loved ones, and trust authorities that were trying to learn maybe at the time. Sadly, though, we saw a lot of hypocrisy. We saw a lot of double standards, and we also saw a lot of inequality of wealth expand. And that's the thing that's hard for me to let go of, Again, like you see someone like Prince Charles right now, King Charles, should I say, wanting to apologise for slavery, were everyone just working it out at the time, there was a lot of mistakes, and I think most people want to see transparency, most people want to see honesty, and that's the majority. I really believe that, and if we start to shut down and not ask questions, or we start to get hypnotized by certain things like AI or whatever it may be that's not necessarily in integrity, then we start to become less sovereign. So let's see how it all plays out. But we're all participating, we're all out making the difference. And if we're recognising our differences and having conversations, or we're suffering and we're turning it into art, we're concerned about the world, about the state of play, and we're making a difference, i.e. let's say we're taking a punt on, let's say, I don't know, Bitcoin, whatever it may be, or getting a bit of gold, silver, that kind of thing, then we're securing ourselves for potentials that might be upcoming. And even if they don't happen, even if there's a solution to all of this, then we've lost not really losing anything. Like, for example, like gold, it's a deflationary asset. If you've got a position in gold, then at least you're not going to lose money when inflation is still rampant. There's still a lot of bizarrity in the world. There's still a lot of people saying there is no inflation, or, well, not so much that, but they're not looking at these other, they don't know, they're not looking at Argentina, they're not looking at these things, they're not recognising that Credit Suisse, the fact that it's had a bail-in is a big deal, and this is continuing, and what they're doing, just sitting, not considering any of these things. The reality is that this may well be a lot worse situation than 1929 in terms of the crash that's potentially coming, or the change that's coming, or the crisis that's coming to change the new world order or the financial system. Now, again, I don't want to promote fear, because that's the worst thing I could be doing right now. I'm just asking everyone to kind of consider the potentials of what's coming. And just to do a little bit. That's all it takes. It doesn't require a stressful change, and you think about Ukraine, just think how horrendous that would be, you're just living there and suddenly, you've got to leave, you're a refugee now, and it's not just happened in Ukraine, obviously it's happened in other countries, and then you've got a country that has taken that decision, let's say like the UK, and then you're dealing with Syrian refugees or whatever it may be, and people thinking you're coming and taking my land now, so it's a very dangerous place to be, with protectionism, and it's a sad place to be, when people start to consider their own loss. How do we deal with it? How do we create better values in the world? Care, honesty, kindness. How do we do it? And this is the beauty of this time, and usually it comes through art. I encourage all the musicians, all the artists, all the poets, all the lyricists. I encourage those people right now, more than anyone else, even though, AI is going to affect everything. If you're in the medical industry, you're going to get affected. If every industry, you're going to get affected. But how do you pivot? How do you make the difference? Well, that's, to me, where the artist comes in. And if you've got ideas right now, make a t-shirt, do something, write a poem. Go get your friends together and all of you do something creative together, because that's the difference between feeling stuck and feeling empowered. And it doesn't take that much. So just to say this quickly about the astrology, because I know a lot of people are joining this for the astrology. We're so close now to moving out of what has been a very stressful period. And I want everyone to feel hope and excitement as best as you can. Personally, I've been feeling very low the last couple of months, just simply because there's been so much change going on in my life that it was hard, to kind of get out of a feeling just out of sorts. And then I've come over here and I've had the most amazing time that, I'm feeling excited again. So it just goes to show that you can break that, so feel hope, feel excitement, trust that, again, if you want to call it God, you want to call it the universe, there is a path to all of this. There is something waiting for you, and you've got to just see it through. And we're so close now. So, my conversations are going to change a lot in June. March to May was very, very important. And we're so close to the other side of it. So this Mercury retrograde, it's going to go direct next week. We're still in the shadow period. We're not really out of this until the end of May. Venus is in Cancer still, and there's some trine aspects occurring which are helping. So wait for the 14th. Wait for this Mercury direct. We're still going to be in the shadow, but that's a shifting moment. But next week when we chat, it's going to be much more relevant. The sun is conjuncting Uranus tomorrow, so we're in a lot of instability still, Like I said, Mercury is in Taurus. We're still in this Taurus energy, which is shaking things up, is changing things. If you're feeling positive, though, if things are starting to move forward in a positive direction, you're starting to feel glimmers of hope, and you're starting to get back into some kind of feeling of gratitude, then that's wonderful. Keep doing that, keep feeling that. And trust, and go into gratitude that, once we get to the end of the month, however it looks, that's when the new theme and new things I'm going to start talking about. So we're so close. So next week is a big, big week. So get ready. Jupiter will be going into Taurus. We're going to have one of the biggest aspects that I believe is coming with this Jupiter square Pluto, and that's next week. Obviously, this is the proliferation of the last couple of months as well. So it's not just next week, it's all of what's been going on for the last couple of months. And you've got to put it into context. You've got to see how it is feeling for you right now. And if you're having a radical shift, like the eclipse, the Scorpio eclipse that we just had at the weekend has just brought a lot of stuff out, because that's what Scorpio does, then be grateful. You don't have to do that as much now. So finally coming out of that, and whatever needed to come out of the last couple of weeks, especially with that Aries eclipse as well, needed to come out. And if it's ended things, then that the writing's on the wall. If the cracks that have come up, there's too much change, or you can't go back, then that's it. It's coming to an end now, and you've got to move on to the next stage. It's necessary, Scorpio. It's like you think about homeopathy. It's like a poison that you have all these little poisons that create this, medicine. So it's an extreme time, but we're really coming towards the end of the other side of it. Doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't got more new things to occur. But that Scorpio thing is hard, and it goes all the way back to 2012, and we're really coming out of it now. Like I say, we still got the eclipse in October, November, before that's fully completed, and the South Node will shift in July, and then we're out of a lot of the extreme aspects of Scorpio. I think for a lot of people it's a welcome relief. But again, all the signs serve, that medicine was required to change things, to get us into, hopefully, this exponential wave, which we can all benefit from, we can all profit from. So don't underestimate, I like to call it grace, God's grace or grace. Don't underestimate it. It's always serving us, and if we can manage these challenges, if we can get through the difficulty, if we can start to get more, Sagittarian perspective, philosophize about it all, then we can recognise the difference and then make the change that is necessary and start to believe and trust and gain momentum. Because, if you're on the right side of this AI, you're on the right side of technology, it serves you. It's like getting on a spaceship. You can fly much more fast, much more dramatically, and create so much difference and serve, in a much better way that it's never been a better time. So I really encourage everyone to pat themselves on the back and think, we're getting there now. And remember, we've still got the Mercury direct motion to happen. And it still is unstable because of, like I say, the Sun conjunct Uranus. But these trine aspects, these faster moving planets, are helping us, moving us more towards the final finale, really, of this 3-month transit of March to May, coming next week. And we'll discuss it next week. And let's see where we're at next week, because you never know. This might be the moment we've been waiting for massive transformation and growth. Let's see how the world goes this week. It's still very bizarre out there. Obviously, there's still a lot of manipulation going on, and we just got to keep going. So with all that, I think I've been talking a while now, and I want to go enjoy the sun. And yeah, I'm super grateful for you all, and just trust that, there's always a purpose to all of this, and no matter how difficult and challenging it is, if we can go with it, flow with it, and participate and do the best that we can, and if that means taking time out, like, my God, I'm so grateful for some of the healers that I have in my life. I went for an EMDR session last week, and it just got me into a better feeling state. Hot springs, these sort of luxuries, really, I suppose, that we have here. But you can go for a bath, you can go for a shower, you can get your feet on the grass, you can say I love you to someone, that you haven't said it for a while. There's so many ways to break these stuck patterns and feeling upset or whatever it may be. There's so many ways, to just shift what might feel stuck. And it's much better to try do it yourself than be forced to do it, like I say, there still is that energy, forced out of a job, forced out of a relationship, it's still there. But we're so close now, to getting towards the end of the May, and like I said, we'll have different conversations in June from what I've been saying for the past, really since the start of the year. All right, so there's no other I can't see any questions here. Like I say, thanks for listening. Love you all, and super excited to connect. And I'm feeling excited right now. So let's get on this train and start kicking some ass. There's no point us feeling depressed or wanting to check out or giving up. No point at all. No, if anything, what we've got to do now is, once we get through this, is to really, really go for it, like on a whole nother level of energy, excitement, enthusiasm, passion. If you get knocked off your horse, let's say the Sagittarius perspective now, you get back on the horse, and this time you're going to ride hard, because there is a lot to see, a lot to explore, and a lot to gain, from this earth. There really, really is. So if you want to be part of that, then stay tuned, because we've got a lot coming your way. All right, with that in mind, take care, and love you all.